the Microsoft team, you would see on the left-hand side a little button that creates awareness that you are recording this meeting. So it was very nice. Be sure to let everyone know.
Okay. Oh, this is... I'm sorry, I'm having problems because I don't use Microsoft so often, and now I ask.
Don't worry about it, Mr. Ng. What we can do, we can just record it verbally, you know, because I can hear you, you can hear me well.
Yes, I'm still trying to. Obviously, it's nicer to be face to face, but I'm waiting for some code.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we are forced to use it because this is the official platform of the university. Well, how is the weather today?
Sorry?
How is the weather today?
Oh, it's very hot in Hong Kong today. It's 30 degrees centigrade.
Always. Isn't it always?
Yeah, we haven't had much of a winter here.
No. I remember, I mean, I was working in Hong Kong while it was still Hong Kong, you know, while it was still belonging to the British Empire. And I remember it was always rather on the hot side, to say the least. Yes. Do they still have the airport is still located where they are? So you're flying in over the buildings. Is
No.
It
moved to like Lantau Island. It's on a way of. No, you don't have that exciting landing and takeoff experience anymore.
No.
I'm afraid.
Ah, bummer.
So annoying.
Don't worry about it if it's not working, you know. We all prefer face-to-face, you know, so I can also see your body language, which is interesting. You know? It's always our, how shall I say, the second layer of analysis. We always take notes and we look at the video again, because often, even if you don't say something, your body language clearly expresses what you mean by something or how you react to something. So it's important for us to understand. But if it's not possible, you know, don't worry about it.
Okay, I finally got a new password bar. Installation successful. Add your phone number. Okay.
It's interesting for me to see that I can talk to you on the platform without you having it installed. That's a rather unusual thing, isn't it? I'm like, how do
I think we're getting there. Just give me a bit more time.
Sure.
So many passwords and verifications and things.
Jesus.
Wow, I'm going to do a big page now.
Thinking about the customer experiences, I always believe there must be a better solution to all this password nonsense, you know.
I have so many. I keep a few passwords in my head, but otherwise it's extremely difficult. No.
Yeah.
Meet now.
Meet now sounds good.
Get a link to start meeting. Ah, I know, because I've now installed the video thing. I have to click back on to the original meeting. So I think I'll probably have to disconnect here and click again. So
Perfect. And I'll let you in as soon as I see you.
yes, okay, I'll disappear probably now for a moment. Okay.
Not a problem. Excellent. Thank you. We got it.
Yes, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Ah, good.
Excellent. Well done.
Right.
We made it.
Yes,
Excellent. Yeah. So, and now it's still recording. Everything is fine, you know.
Okay.
So, let me ask you, when was the first time you ever had contact with the Pernod Ricard brand, so to say?
Gosh, I guess when one legally became of age to drink alcohol. This is the politically correct answer.
And what was the first brand that you connected to Pernod Ricard? What was your first experience, so to say,
I
with
guess
their
it's probably
spirits?
vodka in those days.
Vodka.
Yes, so probably Absolute.
You mentioned in those days. So did it change?
Yes, just like a brief introduction of myself, because you may tell from my voice, I was born in England. And so, although I've lived in Hong Kong for many years now, my childhood and growing up was in England. So you very much have a, how to say it, in terms of alcohol, a beer sort of.
A pint.
Yes. Yeah. So I remember my first sort of, experience with alcohol was with friends brewing cheap real ale, you know, in back garden sheds before one was allowed to officially go into a pub. So the initial exposure to alcohol was all with beer, and more on sort of beer and pale ale and things rather than lager, which was very considered like a European drink and not the real thing. So when you come to, say, Pernod Ricard brands, then you're looking more at an advanced age, because really it was all about beer and being able to drink beer. And in terms of price point as well, you know, you'd get a pint of beer, a lot of volume for a cheaper price than a short or something where you're paying a higher price for a much smaller amount of volume, which if you're in a pub with friends, it would, even with a mixer, would go down very quickly.
Yeah. And vodka or shots are more served in a club atmosphere, you know?
Yes, and it's an easier drink. You know, it's in that way, like it mixes with many things, you know, and it's just an easier drink, I think. You know, it's I wouldn't use the word sophisticated, but it's the type of drink where a vodka is a vodka, whether you mixed it with lime or whatever, and you drink it and you got the fiery alcoholic sensation, and that was it. You know, when you go into the whiskies and all this kind of thing, then it's a more sophisticated drink because the difference in the taste of the types of malt is a more sophisticated drink. And when you're young, that doesn't really come into it. I mean, to be honest, I didn't drink whiskey at all. In fact, I'm not a big whiskey drinker, but I didn't drink whiskey at all much until it became a thing here in Hong Kong. I didn't really drink it in the UK. I mean, I came to the UK I came to Hong Kong after graduating. So I've been in Hong Kong since graduating, which is a long time ago now. But in terms of my UK drinking times, it was really mainly beer. And coming to Hong Kong and growing up in career-wise, this kind of thing, then there was more exposure, actually initially more exposure to brandy and XO, which was very much an Asian, very much a Chinese thing at the time. But over the years, whiskey took over from brandy and XO cognac as the drink for, say, wedding banquets, business dinners, and this kind of thing. So it was only then that I started drinking some sort of whiskey as such, in terms of other spirits.
Ah, interesting. So there was almost like an evolutionary principle.
Yes, you could say that. You could say an evolution based on where you are and based on price, affordability.
And also, in your case, based upon your career, I reckon. You know,
yes, because you know the business dinner and getting together with business partners over a meal is a very important part of doing business here, especially in this part of the world. And in that kind of scenario, the alcohol you drink becomes like an element of prestige in terms of who you are dining with and who you are entertaining or who you are being entertained by. So there's very much a prestige element built into the alcohol that you drink. And you can see that shifting now. I would say that when I first came to Hong Kong, XO cognac was the thing to offer and entertain with. And then there was a shift to whiskies. And now, to be honest, now with the way Hong Kong has developed, there is actually, I can see a move to your Chinese spirits, your Mao Tai, and that kind of thing. Because obviously there's a bigger influence of China on Hong Kong business and society. So I do see that kind of evolution. There will always, of course, be places for Pernod Ricard and its brands because there's so many and there's so many different types of spirits. But I mean, I'm no expert in terms of how market share is, but I would guess from my own experience that there should be some inroads in terms of the Chinese spirits, in terms of the general spirits market as such here in Hong Kong. I would guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my feeling.
No, and that's important how you feel about that. It's interesting. You mentioned, first of all, you mentioned it as a prestige. So that indicates that it's being perceived by the host and also by the guests then when you have a dinner.
Definitely,
so it's something that's been paid attention to.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And that shifted also from cognac and brandy towards whiskey and now towards Chinese.
Yes, I mean, a subtle kind of shift. But I would also add, you know, apart from your brandies and your whiskeys, champagne is universal. Champagne has never changed.
Yeah.
Champagne is welcome at any gathering.
Is that also used in a business context or more in a private context?
Both. Because in the end, champagne is celebratory. It has an image of celebration. So in a business meeting, if you've just done a deal, hello?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Your face froze.
Sorry.
And so if you are celebrating a business deal, of course you're going to open the champagne to start off with as a cause for celebration. You may then move on to fine red wines and spirits, but champagne, there will always be a place of champagne, for sure.
That's interesting. Go figure. What is your personal preference? What are you into in terms of spirits? What's your favorite, or is it also depending? It seems to me it's all very context specific.
Yes, it is. I mean, to be honest,
Yeah.
how do I categorize myself is I'm not an alcohol lover. I'm really someone who drinks alcohol, as you mentioned, purely in relation to social activity, friends, and this kind of thing. I'm not the kind of person who will come home in the evening and say, God, I'm desperate for a drink. I'm quite happy to just drink a Coke or have a coffee or something.
So not the
But if I'm
American
with friends and
principle.
someone
Yeah.
says, oh, let's open a bottle of, whatever, I will join in. And I would understand that as being part of the setting the atmosphere for that gathering, whether it's a dinner or drinks with friends or going out or this kind of thing.
So it's related to social interaction.
Yes.
You wouldn't sit down and say, let's open a bottle of this just for myself and enjoy it in front of the fireplace.
But that's me personally, yes.
Yeah, oh no, that's totally fine. So it's more something for coming together, connecting, in which business or private, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't be the person who said, who initiates it, so to say, for the lack of a better word.
I may well say something like champagne, because the way I see champagne is very specific on a celebration. So if it's friends you haven't seen for a while, hey, let's open a bottle of champagne. It really has that sort of connotation. So things like champagne, yes, I would do, but I wouldn't be the type of person saying, let's open a bottle of Martell or something. It just wouldn't be me. I mean, I have friends who would, but it wouldn't be me specifically.
Ah, interesting. So let me ask you something regarding that. You are you are considered by Pernod Ricard one of their VIP clients.
Right.
How come, according to you? How did you get to that status? I mean,
I would say is that now in my career, I'm not working at the moment. I was basically working in retail and luxury goods for 25 years. So not in wines and spirits, but in watches, jewelry, apparel, accessories, this kind of business, and in retail as well. So obviously, how would I say it? I was living a certain kind of life. The type of people I meet, the friends I have, the business relationships I built up over time, and this kind of thing. So connection. And obviously, because it's connection, we are going to, as I said, I may not be the initiator, but I will be joining a lot of business gatherings, dinners, events, and sadly no events now, but where alcohol drinks, champagne, cocktails, and all this kind of thing are going to be served. And of course, I would also be ordering myself for my own entertaining of friends and this kind of thing. So, that's sort of on that kind of basis, I build up a relationship, not just with Pernod Ricard, but with other luxury brand people here in Hong Kong.
And that makes sense, because it's kind of it was your professional and also then by default your personal lifestyle.
Yes.
And she went also to a lot of this co-branded events, when they were a sponsor of it. So it's just it's your natural environment, that you get in touch with it. And so they also then highlighted you as look, he's always here, probably you should talk to him a little.
And I guess why they put my name forward is because I have that kind of background in the luxury sector anyway. I said not wines and spirits, but in the luxury sector here in Hong Kong.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Good for you. Well done. Yeah. So they regained. How did they then, how shall I say, get in touch with you? Did they invite you to a special event, or did somebody approach?
Some events which have been arranged by or organized by Pernod Ricard. That's correct, yes. So I met some of the other VIPs and got to know some of the people and this kind of thing. But as I say, sadly, that's all at a standstill now. They're not just in Hong Kong, but everywhere. I mean, 0 events now here.
Sadly, but hey, what can we do? One question. we always try to find out how it made you feel when you were invited. And normally people feel like, oh, that's a privilege, or they really enjoy it. But somebody like you who is kind of used to that, was it a big thing, or just like, man, another event, I go there, you know?
I think it depends on the nature of the event. To be honest, you know, I attended and I've been an organizer of so many cocktail events in my working life that actually it's very difficult to stand out. What I've noticed with Pernod Ricard, a lot of the events, they've been much more cozy. You know, rather than have a cocktail event with 100 people, maybe they will have arranged dinners in special or unusual venues, maybe 12 people, maybe less, or up to say 20 people. So they've tried to create an exclusive, more prestigious kind of
more intimate.
Yes, and more intimate for their guests. And that's noticeable. But to be honest, I will also say this, many other brands in other categories are exactly the same. There's so many brands now, not just in wine and spirits, but around, who are very keen to try and, organize more exclusive, special, unusual events for their guests and VIPs. It's very competitive. And in a place like Hong Kong, which is so small, that makes it even more difficult because there's only X number of venues or things that can be done. So you'll find in Hong Kong, which is quite interesting, is that any new building which comes up or any new open space which becomes available, you can see brands, whether they're in wine and spirits or fashion or leather goods, fighting to be like the first to hold an event in that space. Because, you know, like in many things in life, you know, being the first is so important. And then if any other brand maybe does an even better event at that location, the original brand can still say, oh, but we were the first to manage to arrange something there.
I can see that. So there's a kind of, the way to describe it, it seems like everybody has the system dialed in as the event in itself. So the blueprint, the intimate, exclusive, personalized, etc., etc. Now it's more, what didn't we have yet? Where's something new, you know, etc., etc.
And it's very difficult in Hong Kong because it's a small place. It's very difficult. So I give it, you know, I take my hat off to a lot of these people, the creative people or the PR people or the events organizers who come up with these new spaces, whatever, you know. So we have a lot of things which are very temporary. And I actually sometimes think the budgets, okay, maybe not, you know, I'm talking about now, say a few years pre-pandemic, you know, would put up sort of huge tents in the middle of nowhere just to create a new experience because all the hardware or the existing buildings or theaters or exhibition spaces have all been done to death or don't have that originality or exclusivity anymore. But that's the kind of society Hong Kong is. I mean, that also impacts on, if I sort of generalize more, I always think it's very difficult, say, for a new restaurant or a new bar here in Hong Kong, because as soon as the restaurant opens, everyone wants to dine there. And be the first to then put on their social media that I dined here, blah, 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 the food was good, or blah, blah, blah. And then 6 months down the line, that's it. And yet, you know, the investment in building a restaurant, you know, the kitchen hardware, this kind of thing is, you know, it's a lot. But unless, say, a restaurant, for example, can maintain some sort of noise, you know, the Hong Kong crowd is quite fickle. They're already moving on to the next new thing. Oh. And that crowd is not huge. Let's face it, it's not a huge crowd. You know, okay, we have a very condensed population here in Hong Kong, but the specific crowd which certain prestigious brands are targeting, it's not that big as such. So it's really difficult for these people, you know, whether it's a bar or a restaurant, to maintain that sort of hit image here in this place. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
Oh, it's great insights. I had no idea. So they are always, let's say, the target group for them, and this particular segment is always looking for the next best thing. But
Yes.
there doesn't seem to be a lot of continuity. It's more like been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Let's move on to the next thing.
But what I mean is like there's loyalty to the brand for sure, but it's very difficult for the brand to keep on coming up with something to how to say, keep its customers really close to them in terms of this kind of thing. But there's a great deal of brand loyalty for sure here in this part of the world.
So do you believe if they wouldn't, let's say Pernod Ricard wouldn't put on these events anymore, or as right now, you know, or in the future, or couldn't be the first one in the new restaurant, in the new location and so on, people would switch their loyalty to another brand?
Not necessarily, because, you know, when it comes, for me, you know, when it comes down to wine and spirits, if you like the taste, you like the taste. It's different from, say, fashion, I would say, because, you know, designers come and go. New designers come to a brand and they'll reinterpret the history of the brand or the positioning of the brand in their way. But when you come to wines and spirits, the taste is very important. If I like the taste of, say, Perrier-Jouet champagne, I like the taste. I'm not, because you don't hold an event, doesn't mean that, oh, I'm going to switch to, you know, Reinach or Moet or something like that. Yeah. It's a slightly different kind of product in terms of the brand loyalty. But of course, you know, I think the VIPs and the target customer that someone like Pernod Ricard is trying to target, they must keep a connection with them. So you can't just say, oh, okay, we scrap the event. Yeah, no, we use it on something else, because these people are never going to switch to another brand. Of course, you've got to build a brand loyalty. But I think, as I said, with wines and spirits, it's slightly different from other luxury products.
That makes sense. Also because the product in itself takes a time to how shall I say, come to fruition and can be used, and then it's consistency rather than in fashion that it's a spring, fall, here we go.
Exactly. You know, and as I said, I think what I would say is that, you know, sort of taking my own experience as an example, it means that for say a group like Pernod Ricard, you have to try and get your customer sort of attraction early on, younger, so that if they like the product, they feel that the product they are drinking has that certain cachet or prestige or whatever they're looking for in a drink, in a label of a vodka, in a label of a gin. And I'm not saying you grab them young in terms of drinking alcohol, but I'm saying in terms of building a brand recognition and loyalty to a brand, it's very important in those formative years when people are first initially going to be exposed to that kind of product, to introduce that product at that time. And then I think, as I said, it's not a matter of then saying, oh, they're going to drink this product for life. But you've got them at an early stage, and if you develop that kind of loyalty, then these customers have the potential to be lifelong customers because they like your product in terms of the actual taste. How you market it is different, but if they like the taste, then that person is going to be a longer lasting customer than if the first swig they take, oh God, I can't stand it, it's too bitter or something. Then whatever you do, they're not going to like the product.
That makes sense, you know, because otherwise everyone is competing for the same group that's already established. You know, it's like with the efforts, almost like the Delaware effect, you know, a race to the bottom. Everybody wants to make a bigger march, and for very tiny amount
Yes.
of
Now,
flour.
as I said, the thing is like, if your customer doesn't even like the taste of what you're producing, no matter how you try and spin it, okay, they may buy a few bottles, but they want it to put on the shelf. And so when visitors come, friends come to their home, say, oh, they have a few bottles of this on their shelf. So people say, you have a few bottles of this. So those brands have a prestige value. So therefore, the positioning is right. But if people don't actually like the taste, then there's not much you can do.
It's like, yeah, doesn't it look great? Would you like to have it? No. It's like driving a Jaguar back in the days, doesn't it look great? Yeah, it looks great. Would you like to drive it? No, thanks. No, I can see that. That makes sense. And that's actually great advice that we will be. So when you compare them in terms of events, or not just events, let's say how they try to build relationship with customers. Because you are an expert, so you can say, look, guys, here you're pretty good. There's tremendous room for improvement. How would you evaluate them and their efforts?
I personally, I would say that I've been focused more on the champagne brands rather than the other brands, because I drink more champagne than, for me, it's like, as a
celebration. Exactly.
Yes, but I'll say it's like, if I'd say I'm not a really big whiskey fan, you invite me as a VIP to a whiskey event, I'm not going to appreciate it so much, because I appreciate that you think of me and then you would like me to invite me to your prestigious event. But if I don't particularly like the drink, then it's a strange situation. But the events I've been to, I found very enjoyable, because I found that there has been an element of exclusivity, and a lot of thought has been put into nurturing the customer, the VIP. So I have been quite appreciative of the events that I have been to.
Can you give me an example of what you just described, how they achieved that?
Like I recall going to a dinner, which was is a museum, with a small museum in an old building on Hong Kong Island, and I think it may be 20 or 30 guests. There was some art exhibition, so it was an art exhibition at the same time, so you could appreciate the art too. And then, as I said, because I had not dined at that location before, so it was a first for me. So I immediately think, for me, I'm interested to go, because I know that there is this new museum. I haven't been there, but this brand has arranged a small, cozy dinner for its VIP customers. I'm interested to go, and it's exclusive, it's cozy, it's not shouting across a cocktail event. You can actually talk to the people you're sitting next to and across, and have a conversation, whether you know them or not, rather than some other sort of more mass kind of event, so to speak. And so the whole evening is something where you have a warm, cozy feeling, and you feel appreciated, and you appreciate the product, and you go away from the event having a good feeling about the brand.
So there are two things I can take away from that. One is, again, when you mentioned the Hong Kong phenomenon, the first time being there, not being, it was more the venue rather than the event, somebody else.
I don't know if that's just Hong Kong. Maybe it's very important in Hong Kong, but I'm sure elsewhere in Asia or around the world, in Europe, I'm sure people are always trying to look for that location which hasn't been used. Or say before it was not allowed to be used for commercial reasons, but because of some negotiation, some brand has managed to use that government space or something for a commercial event or dinner. I'm sure that happens globally, not just Hong Kong, but I think it's what I know. You notice more here in Hong Kong since I live here, and because the place is so small, it's not easy to find that kind of location.
Do you have to go outside of Hong Kong to do that? Do brands go outside of Hong Kong then?
I have been to say, because obviously luxury goods in China have been flourishing. And my friends who work in luxury goods tell me, because, basically the pandemic is under control in China. The business that the luxury brands are doing in China, I think, are basically supporting the entire global sales of these international brands. It's basically, and friends of mine tell me that before, because actually the duties on luxury goods is quite high in China. So the Chinese would travel to, say, Hong Kong. We have no duties or taxes here, or they go to Europe. Okay, you may not like it, but you go to Paris or Milan, and it's the Chinese who are sweeping up the luxury goods. And because they basically are paying such a cheap the price. Basically, they can cover their stay in a 5-star hotel and business or first class travel, and they still come out with a profit rather than buying the goods in China. But because all that is gone, the duties have been slightly reduced now in China. And anyway, if you have a burgeoning consumer market which wants to spend, they're going to buy in their home territory because they can't travel elsewhere. So before, Hong Kong was more like this gateway, and we used to get a lot of the Chinese tourists into Hong Kong to buy luxury goods. Unfortunately, now because of the pandemic, that's stopped. But for example, I've been invited to events in Shanghai and places for luxury brands where they've invited their VIPs from certain territories to go to other territories for a VIP experience. And so, again, it's part of building the connection between the brand and the customer. Because obviously, there's one thing to be invited to a cozy dinner in a museum in Hong Kong. It's another thing to be invited, air tickets and luxury hotel paid for by the brand to go for an exclusive dinner in Shanghai, for example. It's a different ball game.
Level.
And it certainly happens, with the luxury brands, fashion, accessories, this kind of thing. Quite a lot. I mean, even to the extent of with the fashion brands, you have a lot of the super VIP, so to speak, who have flown to Paris, for the fashion show, exclusive dinner with the designer, and all this kind of thing. But that's like the super VIP level with the really crazy luxury brands. I'm not that level, but I know about them for sure.
We heard of them. We do a lot of work with the in private aviation, art collection, and super yachting. So we interview a lot of them, and it's always refreshing to hear how people always say, "How can you talk to all these billionaires?" I'm like, "But they're just people like you and I, When you cut them, they bleed, and they are very pleasant to talk to, So it's why they've been treated on a different level. I always think they're regular human beings.
Yes. Yeah, that's important, because some people, in a way, can be intimidated by meeting these kind of people. As you say, they are the same as us, eyes, nose, mouth.
And
they just have a bigger bank account.
In our position, you get the opposite effect, that they're intimidated by you being a professor. They're like, "Oh, a professor, oh Jesus," and I'm like, no, relax, it's fine, So, but the second part that I read between the lines, you mentioned a lot of this coziness, intimacy, and also that you were. It almost sounds to me like it's a little bit more informal than other events. So not that. Like, this is our product, this is this, not that structured in a way that there's no flexibility. It sounds more like getting together and getting to know people. And by the way, we also serve our brands. Do I get that right? Or is that?
Yes, I think, life in general is becoming more informal. When I first arrived here in Hong Kong, I used to go to many society balls, charity balls, society balls, this kind of thing. Must be tuxedo, ladies in full-length evening gowns, jewelry, etc. And over the years, you can see, yes, you still have charity balls, gala dinners, this kind of thing, but elements of informality creep in. And yes, there'll be the traditionalists who don't like that, who feel that, you know, a tuxedo is a black tie dinner is a black tie dinner. And yes, of course, there are still some of those, but you almost get to the stage now where if some charity or some organization insists on black tie, there will be people who will be turned off in attending because they don't want to dress up like this in such a formal way. So yes, you know, you get sort of the gray lines and the edges where people will just wear a black suit and white sneakers, you know, they don't want to wear the black painted leather shoes. You know, you have that kind of thing coming in. And, you know, that's an example in terms of society. But again, in terms of the event, you will have that. You know, people don't want, okay, you can have a very grand ballroom, you can have a very grand event, but people are moving away from such formality. I think just in general, and certainly in this part of the world too. You know, there are occasions where you can show off your multi-million-dollar watch and your fabulous jewelry, but there are much more occasions when you don't need to do so now. And I think that society in general has moved in that kind of direction.
Ah, that's interesting to hear. Thank you for sharing this. So I was
my view anyway.
No, and the only view that counts today is your view, sir. You know, nothing else matters. It's about your experiences. Mm-hmm. So if you now would get a call from Pernod Ricard in Hong Kong and they say, Mr. Ng, we know your services are currently available. Would you like to take over the business? You know, and be responsible for our client relationship management. What would be the first thing you would do?
I would say thank you very much, but I have to pass on your kind offer.
Let's say, hypothetically.
Well, I think, you know, what the first thing obviously you would do is would review the existing structures and review what actually is currently being done, and ask the senior executives the rationale between the current situation and why it is that way. And then obviously, you know, the way I used to always work is then you'd have to ask the team, are they in agreement with the current direction of what is happening? And then get their feedback in terms of where do you think the direction should be? And then once assessing all the feedback about the existing and the thoughts of your own team about whether, oh yeah, everything's great now, or no, there are certain areas where we feel we should move more into this area, or, you know, rather than more, you know, there's now a big move into social media, this kind of thing, which I think for a lot of the prestige brands, I know it's important, but personally, maybe I'm too old school. I'm so about the push into social media. And then obviously, then having got all the information and feedback, and then think about it and see whether I would agree or bring my own input based on what I hear from the team. That's what I basically my situation would be.
Yeah. And you might also be looking at, how shall I say, keeping the younger, you know, the entry-level client in mind in order to create lifelong.
Definitely entry level, but, you know, I think from my own experience that different kinds of products have different entry levels. So you can't say, the age to drink is 18 years old, then I'm going to bombard them with all these brands, because it doesn't mean anything to that person at that age or understanding or sophistication. So I think each brand would, and I'm sure they do, have some idea of who their target customer is, and in terms of their lifestyle, their age, this kind of thing. So you have a brand which is saying targeting a 25 to 40-year-old customer, then you'll be looking at, 23, 24, 25-year-old. What are they interested in now? How do they spend their discretionary income? What are they doing in their spare time? How are they possibly going to gain exposure to the brands that we want to introduce to them? And then try and connect something to that group. But as I said, it really depends on the specifics of each brand and what their targets are and what they wanted to achieve. But it's important, I think, to like get them young, not get them young, but get them at the right time for your brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's another thing I would like you to clarify for me, because again, we're always trying to read between the lines. You mentioned if I get invited for whiskey, I don't really care about whiskey. Does that mean that even while you have relationship with the brands and they take on the event, that there might be often a lack of understanding of your personal needs in a better way? That they might know your income and which connection they get, but they never, provocative now, take the time to really sit down with you and say, Mr. Ng, tell me, which is what you're really interested in? Should we invite you for this, or are you looking more forward to this?
Yes, I think you'd be correct in that. You know, a lot of luxury brands, they are looking at the person and their lifestyle and maybe their income or the assets, and then saying, oh, this is my target. And I think you can do that more in maybe in things like fashion or whatever. Okay, you know, if you're a luxury brand and you're selling suits, okay, fine, you can sell a suit. You may, you know, there are different types of suit with different target, you know, a more conservative, traditional, customized or whatever suit, yeah. But a suit's a suit. I think I go back to my point earlier as I was saying, and I think you make a good point, is that if the target customer doesn't like whiskey, you're not at the age of 40 or 50, you're not going to, well, you may be able to, but it's not going to be easy to convert them to become a whiskey lover at that stage. So maybe, yes, there can, you know, you could see perhaps there's some wasted effort in trying to introduce a customer to something which purely based on taste, nothing to do with the prestige value of the product, these kind of things that they don't particularly like. So I think that's a valid point that you make. But whether it's possible for the brand to have such an intimate knowledge of its customers is also very difficult. It's not the kind of thing where you can call up a VIP customer and saying, you know, vodka, gin, whiskey, rum, you know, multiple choice. Please tick the ones you're interested in. Because, you know, a lot of people, you know, would do something like that. And then, but they can't be bothered. They'll just tick everything. They're not going to really spend time. Oh, yeah, I mean, I like gin, but only, you know, before dinner. And I'm not a big gin drinker. You know, it's whether you're going to get the kind of intimate knowledge of your customer, I think it's quite difficult. And then maybe even the customer doesn't want to have such an intimate relationship with the brand too. Both ways.
I can see that. But I also could see when you're at such an event and it's less formal and more intimate, that somebody sit you down and say, oh, we appreciate that you were coming here, but we would really like to know to customize this even better to you. Which one are you really interested in more or less, or which one is not in your scope or you're not interested in? I mean, it would take a minute or two and you would probably say, oh, thanks for asking, you know, whiskey, please, you know. Don't come.
I think, there are certain people who would go to the event, not because they like the product, but because of the prestige of the event and the kind of people they can network with and friends they can see. So for them, the product is secondary to the event and the networking and socializing itself. And then if you approach those people at the event and they tell you that at a whiskey dinner that actually don't like whiskey, it would look terrible.
Yeah, that makes sense. True. So it's more looking for what they call now influencers, or the alpha males and alpha females, in order from the herd then to follow them.
Yes.
Or the pack. Yeah.
There's there's a lot of, and again, I don't think it's exclusive to Hong Kong. There's a lot of hierarchy kind of, and social climbing, social networking, this kind of thing happens everywhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's great.
So sometimes, it's difficult for the brand. For example, if you know, say, a club of, say, 3 or 4 ladies, they're very close friends. Hey, if you really had that intimate knowledge, maybe one likes champagne, 2 like whiskey, and 1 likes cognac. But when you invite them to your prestige event, are you going to only invite the champagne event? You're only going to invite the lady who likes champagne? No, you have to invite all 4. And that's the knowledge which the brand and that's, I think, the level of the intimacy of the relationship which the brand can have. But to narrow it down to, something which the guest actually likes and enjoys and maybe will buy more of your product, that's difficult. I think that's difficult.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's significantly more complex than it looks from the outside, so to say.
Yes. And especially society up here. You have to be very, very careful whom you don't upset. And it's very easy to upset people.
So that's why it's also very important when we speak to a lot of VIP clients like yours, that they normally refer to a person. And this person is normally in the market for like the last 25 years, and they almost consider them friends, somebody they have a long-term relationship with almost. Because they say, he or she understands me and she understands what's going on. So that seems to be also a relevant factor.
Yes. So it's difficult. There's a lot of relationship building and there's a lot of building up of close relationships, but it cannot be as specific as the way you are thinking. And so in terms, you can almost say, budget-wise, there's a lot of like indirect wastage, so to speak, but it's necessary wastage in terms of building up the relationship with those customers who really are your target.
Collateral damage.
Yes, you could say that. Yeah, that's a good term.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's interesting. Mr. Ng, is there anything else you would like to add? Because I'm also conscious of the time. Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I hope I've given you some idea of my perspective on
which is important,
this kind of thing. As I said, it's my personal perspective. But as I said, I know you'll be interviewing, I don't know how many people, but my background is sort of which is basically born in a different country, coming here, also working in the luxury sector. So I have my insights are coming from various different angles. I hope that's helpful to you.
No, most helpful indeed, because it's a very unique perspective. And the more I always say, our job is to find common themes in the uniqueness, things that resonate with a lot of them, the famous 3 to-dos and 3 don't do it,
Right.
Yeah, the do's and the don'ts.
Right.
But I very much appreciated the time. And I have a question for you, Mr. Ng, a last one. We will summarize the findings of our research, like in an executive summary. Would you like to have a copy of it?
Yes, I would be interested to see, because actually I'd be interested to see in terms of your summary, whether what I tell you is what other people tell you, or is completely the opposite of what you're hearing from other people. That would be interesting, yes.
For us, it's always when we work with a lot of these corporations, and we always tell them, one thing is important: if your customers take the time out of their valuable time out of their busy schedule to talk to us, I said, you should also feed back to them. It's not going to be a one-way conversation. They're like, okay, we never thought about this. I'm like, so you normally collect data, but you don't get back to people and say, this is what you did. No. I'm like, okay, now we do it a little bit differently. Right. Now we tell people, This is what came out of it, and it's mostly appreciated. And you will certainly get a copy of it. But unfortunately, don't hold your breath. It will take some time. You know, we are scientists, so we're not a market research agency ticking boxes, you know.
Okay.
So thank you again.
Not at all. It was a pleasure to chat with you today.
Yeah. If you need anything else or you have any question, please feel free to connect. You have my email or on LinkedIn, wherever you would like to. And thank you so very much.
If you have anything follow up, which comes to your mind after this, then please email me. Then
perfect. And may I ask, you're now in early retirement, aren't you?
Yes.
Good for you.
It was a conscious decision I made.
Yeah. Well,
I'm also very grateful that I'm in a position to be able to make this decision. But it's something which for me, you know, a lot of people say, you know, far too young, but it was a decision which I think suits me.
And that's the most important thing. Nothing else matters there. So great, good for you. I'm happy for you. And you're gonna retire in Hong Kong, or you're gonna go back to the UK?
Yes. No, I love it here. You know, and I don't want to get political, but all the stuff you hear on the mainstream media in Europe, please don't believe 80–90% of it. It's not true. The way I see it. I'm quite happy here.
Oh, that's the only thing that counts.
Yeah, and I look at the UK. I still have connections with the UK, my university level, but I just don't have a good feeling for the UK anymore. That's just me, though. You know.
Let me put it in this way. I was educated also in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and in Switzerland. But the last one all in the United Kingdom, including my PhD. And I had a company there, a consultancy company, of course, you know. But once the discussion with Brexit started, I immediately moved. I said, okay, we're going back to Europe. And all my clients are like, you're not going to charge in British pounds anymore? I said, no, we're going to Europe. But you don't know if there's going to be a Brexit or not. I'm like, it's not about if there's a Brexit or not. The indication that it just comes up as a discussion is enough to.
I know. I mean, for me, it was the huge, such a huge disappointment for me. It's like for me, it's not the direction I see the world. You know, I'm a real multilateralist, you know, and I hate the way the world is going. But anyway, that's another discussion.
Yeah, populism, you know.
Yes.
That I always say, if you create an environment of dissatisfaction for decades, it's like having inflammable items all over the room and throwing cigarettes at it. It just takes the right moment in time before it goes all up in flames.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm quite happy here. We have a different scenario here, but I think it's okay as far as I'm concerned.
And that's the only thing that matters.
Yes.
Well, thanks again, and have a great afternoon. Great talking.
And you have a great day. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.